Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Facebook Live. It's great to have you with us, whether you are actually watching this live today on Tuesday at 4:30, or whether you're watching it later on the replay. Great to have you with us either way. As most of you probably know, my name is David Miles, and I'm on a mission to help mortgage brokers and financial advisors to generate a consistent flow of leads from their own websites so as they can stop stressing about where their next client's coming from. Now, today I've got a special guest with me. His name is George Blandford, and he's from a company called UK Linkology. Hi, George. Good to have you with us.
Hi.
And I'm going to be chatting to George about SEO, or search engine optimization, to give it its full name, and a particular branch of SEO that's called link building. Now, as most of you know, although I know about SEO, I'm more of a Google Ads kind of guy, more of a pay-per-click person. So today, instead of hearing about that, we've got the other side of the Google coin, the SEO, which is all around the organic search. We're going to be hearing.
We're going to have a fight, are we?
Yeah, we're going to have a virtual fight over PPC versus SEO. So we're going to be explaining what a bit about what SEO is, in particular what link building is, and why it's important, and sharing some tips about how you can go about doing link building yourselves. As a way of getting more traffic to your website and ultimately, therefore, getting more leads from it. So just before we get going, just so I can check that the tech is all working, if you're watching this at the moment, if you could put a comment in just to say hello, or put hashtag live or hashtag replay to let us know if you're watching it live or on the replay. Just that way I can just check that the comments are coming up as expected. So when we get to your questions, I know that they're going to appear as they should do. Yeah, I can see that's working. Hi, Paul. Good to see you. So yeah, as we talk your questions, as we go through, do feel free to put questions into the chat. And what I do is I'll try and keep an eye on that, as well as asking George my own questions. I'll try and multitask. And if I see something come up in there, I will throw your questions in as well. And we'll also scoop those up at the end. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to put questions in as well, because both George and I will be dipping back in to the group in the next few days. And any new questions that come in, we will pick those up as well. And then just final thing to say, do stick around till the end, because or rather George actually, has got a freebie for all of you as a thank you for coming on today, and we'll give you details of that at the end of the interview. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So George, great to have you with us. How long have you been involved in the world of SEO?
So I kind of before SEO, it was basic advertising, and it was kind of like skyscraper banners and ads, and from that the market shifted into SEO and digital. That was the big focus. So as a link building specialist, I've been doing it for about 7 years. My business partner Jason, who founded the business, has been doing it 16 years. So between us, we've got a lot of experience. I came from larger agencies before Linkology. So yeah, we've stayed ahead of the curve with Google, which is very important.
Fantastic. I suppose actually we ought to just start right with the very basics, just for the benefit of anyone watching who doesn't know. Can you just give us sort of the very quick overview of what actually is link building, and why is it important, and how does it fit into the whole SEO mix?
Okay, so there are many different factors when Google tries to work out who to prioritize on the search results, and a lot of that comes down to trust and authority. Now, if we take it back to basics, if you were looking for a nice restaurant near where you lived, one of your friends said, "Oh, there's a great steakhouse around the corner," and another one piped up and said, "I've been there, it's fantastic," you're more likely to go and have a steak at that restaurant. And it's a similar thing with Google, is that these links that we produce or websites can attract indicate to Google that you're popular and that you're trustworthy, because the types of websites that are linking back to you are seen as authoritative. Now, link building is one aspect of SEO, and it sits in the offsite camp, because all of the activity happens away from your website, whilst as on-site SEO might be headers, meta descriptions, alt image tags, everything that sits on your own website that you control. Link building, like PR mentions, things like that, happen away from your website. So it's controlling those signals external to your site.
Okay, so if I've understood you correctly, then what you're saying really is each of those links from another site to yours is kind of like a vote, you know, or
It's a
be
vote of confidence. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like a little digital endorsement. And kind of what link building companies do is they're scattering these breadcrumbs around for Google to pick up, and after it sees a number of these links coming for a long period of time, it makes that positive association and believes that you're more popular than you might have naturally looked initially. And Google's more confident to then put you up to the top of the search rankings because it believes you're going to offer search people who are using the search engine good experience, the right answers, that type of thing.
got you. And can you explain to me this restaurant concept you mentioned? I vaguely remember those from years ago.
Yeah, so if you imagine,
Oh no, I haven't been in a restaurant for so long.
Oh, right, okay. All those things, yeah.
Yeah, I understood all the link building thing. It was just the restaurants. I was like, what's that about?
What's a steak? That sounds nice.
Yeah. So yeah, because that's been what's interesting about it as well is I think most people when they talk about SEO, you know, people who aren't in the industry but have heard about SEO and hear it's something they need to do, they tend to think about those things you were talking about there, the on-site things, you know, title tags and headers and meta tags and stuff. And
yeah, it's the easiest, and it's the first thing that you're going to control. You know, it's the stuff that you can play around with paragraphing and keywords. It's quite straightforward, but actually the bits that happen away from your site are much more laborious. They take a lot of time to do it right.
Yeah, I see. So obviously, if these links are that important, then you know what kind of things can website owners, you know, the guys watching today, what can they be doing to get more links? Because I guess, you know, with the best will in the world, if you're a small mortgage brokerage, you know, in whatever town, you're not naturally going to get loads of people linking to you, are you? Because you're not a big household name.
No, it's difficult. I mean, for most people, unless you're somebody like Nike or a well-known brand, picking up links naturally is a hard thing to do. So, you know, asking for reviews. If you were offering products to a company, you could offer a product review. You could reach out to local customers that have used your services and ask them to link back to you. So, you know, I used to be in financial services back in the day. So, you know, for example, an insurance broker who deals with a lot of commercial insurance could ask their business colleagues or business clients to link back out to them as a reputable firm. You know, those types of things are aspects you can control. Another type of links is called a citation, and that to you and I is a directory listing. So getting your business listed on various different often free directory sites is a really good thing to do, because that is a link. You know, it shows that you're legitimate, you know, you're a reputable business. That's one way of growing your link profile. You can do it manually yourself. So you could invest in lots of software, and you could basically reach out to publishers that you believe are relevant, you know, niche relevant for what you're doing. You could create content, which is how we kind of go about attracting our links. You could supply articles, you know, from an experience point of view, and weave in links back to your site. Or you could use an agency. Obviously, there's a cost involved there, but you know, it saves you a lot of time. So there's lots of ways of doing it. And in terms of how you go about doing the link building, you could do link exchanges, which is where you could link out to somebody and they could link back to you as kind of like a swap. You could do something called broken link building, which is a little bit more technical, where you go around the web looking at articles, finding links that don't work, contacting websites and offering to replace that link. There's lots of different ways of doing it.
Okay, so what's obviously you talked there really about ways of, and we'll perhaps delve into some of those a bit more in a moment, but you've talked about various ways there of how you can kind of, I guess, accelerate this process and make what's Google's view on this? Because obviously we started off saying that Google sees each link to your site as a vote of confidence, you know, for your website, which is great, but obviously
doesn't like being tricked.
Well, where does that line lie, I suppose, between natural votes and going out and paying for votes? You know, rigging the election, as it were.
Okay, so the official line from Google is that anything that you do to manipulate your link profile is against Google's terms of service. So officially, you're not meant to do anything. You're not meant to send a product for review. You're not meant to ask for a link. You can't get link exchanges. You can't, you know, reach out to old clients. Everybody is supposed to sit around and holistically run their websites and link to whoever they want to link to, and not be kind of influenced by any outside factors. Now, unfortunately, nobody else plays by the rules, not at least most people in the market. So in competitive industries, of course, financial services is very, very competitive. You kind of have to work all the angles with what you've got at your disposal. Now that there are ways of attracting links in a natural way, and there's ways of buying links through a service like ours in a safest way as possible. And of course, there are always ways of doing it in a dodgy way. Now, one of those ways is using overseas providers, typically, and they run things called blog networks. Not sure if everyone's heard of that, but
Oh, is that same as PBNs?
PBNs, yeah. So a PBN fundamentally is an individual who owns a number of different websites, usually on the same IP address, same static IP, that basically link to each other like a spider's web. If you imagine looking at a spider's web on a wall, and you've got 300 sites at each different point, and they all kind of link to each other. Google can see this, and it can see that all of these sites are owned by the same person. And if you get a link on any one of these 300 sites, Google can detect a pattern and potentially get yourself into a lot of trouble. You can get de-index, you can get penalties. So there are ways that you can get into a lot of trouble by building links. However, the way to mitigate this risk is to make sure that at every stage of the work, everything looks natural. So for example, if we're creating content, editorial, the article is good quality, it's written by a native speaker with decent level of intelligence, the subject is, it's attractive, it's timely, and what you're linking out to makes sense. So if you're creating an article on how to retain staff or how to grow your workforce, and then you link out to a insurance broker that talks about health insurance, and one of those paragraphs might be offer good health insurance for your employees, that's completely natural. It makes sense why you're linking out to that person, and making sure that these websites that host these articles that you or I create are good quality. They come from reputable sources, they've got good link profiles. You do your due diligence on these sites to make sure they're legitimate, basically.
Right. And I guess this is where we get into the whole thing of white hat SEO versus black hat, and presumably what we're talking about here is white hat SEO and sort of the private blog networks, and that you were talking about there, that's more in the black hat kind of
It's a funny one. The kind of the line in the sand has moved over time. So back in kind of when I started, which was just after the Penguin update algorithm 2012, that was the big one. What basically happened is before that, black hat was automatic link building. This is where somebody could build 3,000 links at a press of a button. This is where you would have loads of keywords stuffed into the bottom of your website, and the background would be white and your text would be white, and it would be BBC News and all that type of thing.
Yeah, and things like Mortgage Broker London, Mortgage Broker Kent, Mortgage Broker Essex, all those just crammed in there for no. Yeah.
The really hot keywords are just sort of hidden in the site. That was your old school black hat. And white hat was kind of like the clean part of the market. And now kind of the market shift again, and actually link building is an accepted thing to do. But again, it's about doing it right. So making sure that each part justifies the next. That for me sits in the white hat camp. Black hat is kind of still, the network manipulation, these networks that obviously cause those problems. Buying followers, buying signals, all click-through rate manipulation, all that type of stuff is, in my mind, black hat. Very unnatural. Yeah.
Right. I see. Yeah. So you talked earlier about, well, I think I understood you correctly. You were saying that you create content and articles and stuff. Now, is that content to go on your own website, so as there's stuff there for people to link to, or are you talking about you create an article and then you ask someone else to publish it on their website, and within that article there's a link back to your site?
Yeah, the latter. So we would create, so for example, the website publisher that we find that we think would be a good option might be business123.com, just thinking of creating something. And then within that site, there would be a blog, an active blog, and we would write an article which would fit in with that site based on the tone, the structure, the ideation. And then within that article that we produce will be a link back to our client site. And then that article gets placed on the third-party site, the Business 123, and Google crawls that new piece of content as a new page, and then sees this authoritative site, Business 123, mentioning our client, linking back to our client's page, and it sees that mention and that association as an authoritative vote of confidence. And a number of those on a regular basis start to move the needle, because it makes an impact. It gives Google the confidence to try you in a better position.
Oh, I see. So, and it's kind of a win-win, I guess, because in that example, Business 123 are effectively getting people writing content for their site for free, so it's helping their site become bigger. But of course, and then the person they're linking to is winning because they're getting an inbound link. So
yeah, one of the other differences between kind of what sort of service you end up going with, or which part of the market, whether it's black or white hat, is these publishers have the right to reject content. So the people that we work with, they're individual webmasters, they're proper websites. You know, might have a social following. So, you know, like yours, for example, you've got a Facebook group, your site's well established. These are proper websites. So they have the right to reject an article, ask for changes. They might give us topic idea, guidelines, content lengths. You know, they're bothered about what they post. Whilst a blog network, it could literally be gibberish, 1,000 words of gibberish, and they just say, give us some money, and they'll post whatever you want to post. And those used to work years and years and years ago, because Google wasn't so good at doing what it does. And now the algorithm has moved on. It's so complex. You have to basically do everything as if you've hired some high-flying PR agency, and it's appeared naturally. You know, you've got to do that.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, so the whole thing is you're giving a push to something that has to look like it's happened naturally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
got you. So yeah, and actually the thing you said there about rejecting content, I actually get this sometimes, that people send, find my own blog and then send me articles saying, we've written this article, will you publish it? I look at it and go, well, actually no. And they're offering money sometimes.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to publish this because it's just really crappily written, basically, and I don't want to degrade my website by having that on there.
Impact your site. Last thing you want to be doing is ranking for keywords that are completely irrelevant for your website.
Yeah. You mentioned broken link building earlier on, and that's something I've done a little bit of myself, and I've found that can be quite an effective way of doing things. So assuming we're talking about the same thing, you're talking there, are you, about where you're reading a site like Business 123, for example, keep that example, and you see they're linking to an article that explains what Google Ads is, and you click it and it doesn't go anywhere. At that point, I could go to Business 123 and say, I noticed you've got a broken link.
Yes.
Thought I ought to let you know. Oh, and by the way, you could link to my site instead, because I've got an article about the same thing.
I found this thing for you. Please reward me with a link.
And it sounds a bit cheeky, but it does actually, if you put the time and effort in it, it does work, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does work, especially if we typically do that with we've got kind of a PR outreach offering, which is a secondary product, and that's where we have a resource, a real quality resource. So rather than linking to a sales page or a lead funnel, which is quite tempting, we might create an infographic or a video. It might be a data study, and there's a page that has got some statistics in there, and then we would say, look, actually link out to this. It's a really credible resource. That's really good for broken link building.
So if, I know from doing this myself, it can be, there's a fair bit of involved in this, and and in fact, if anyone, some of the people watching this may have seen it in the SEO section of my blog, I've got an article there where I went through a process called shotgun skyscraper link building, which got me some good results, but was quite time consuming. Is that because I was doing it wrong, or does it actually take quite a bit of time and effort if someone wants to do this themselves?
Yeah, it's time. If you start as a business, you've got lots of time to do it. Evenings, weekends. You could naturally reach out to sites, write an article. There's ways of doing it, but unfortunately, you'll get to a point quite quickly where you might be ranking for your brand name, but your site ultimately is just a glossy business card. It doesn't actually perform for the keywords that are driving traffic. And actually, when you look into it, the sites that are ranking well are very well established. They've got big budgets, and they're all doing a lot of activity. And of course, rankings are always proportionate to competition. Everything's moving all the time. So doing it yourself, you can normally get so far, and then you need a lot of links, a lot of work. You need to produce a lot of regular content, and it's very, very difficult to do that in-house. Now, a lot of people do try and grow a team, but then you're looking at, you know, a number of different salaries, holiday liabilities, sickness. Also, it's not that predictable. You know, you'll find that if you start doing just talk about link building because that's what I do, you probably attract a decent amount of links for a first couple of months, and then it will slowly get harder and harder and harder to find these opportunities. And that's when having an agency who's got a lot of quick wins makes a big difference. You know, for, you know, our agency's been doing link building for 12, 13 years. So we've been doing outreach all day, every single niche. We've got a lot of relationships. So that will get you a lot of good quality links. Whilst if you're starting from scratch, it's very slow. And, you know, our outreach, which is outreach is obviously the word I use for sending an email and building a relationship with a publisher. It is manual. It does take time. You have to follow them up. You have to send reminders. You have to ask them to post the content. There's a lot of organization. So yes, there's nothing that we do fundamentally that is magic. It just needs to be managed properly.
Yeah. So I suppose it's a bit like, I mean, I think you mentioned PR earlier on, and I suppose the analogy is it's a bit like it, you know, in the traditional PR world, if I wanted to get my business mentioned in, you know, whether it's the local paper or in, you know, or in the Daily Telegraph or whatever, I can potentially do that myself, but I've got to wine and dine a lot of journalists. I've got to know their phone numbers, first of all, their email addresses to even get in touch with them.
It takes a long time.
Yeah. Whereas by using an agency, they've got those relationships already.
Some of the sites that we work with, they will respond to one or two emails and they'll say, yes, send us an article, we'll have a look. And then other publishers, it's taken months to get links. I remember we did a campaign for Fiat years ago, and it took 8 months to get this one link that we wanted to get. 8 months of emailing and contacting just to get one conversion. It can take a long time. That's obviously why services cost what they cost, because of the amount of resource. But yeah, it's very, very difficult to make link building profitable unless you specialize in it. So having an agency that just does that, and all the systems, all the account managers, all geared up, ready to do it, trying to do it in-house, it is expensive. And you can't predict how many links you're going to get. You know, if I spend 10K on staffing and software and all this type of thing, how many links is that going to give you? You just don't know. It's not predictable.
Yeah. And I suppose, I mean, actually going back to what you said at the beginning about that sort of battle between SEO and PPC, this is what, when I'm talking about the comparison between the two, one of the things I do always point out to people is there's this perception or this myth that SEO is free. And the thing I always say is, it's free at the point of the click, so it doesn't cost you anything to get someone to click on your organic result and come to the site. But in the same way that like the NHS is free at the point you use it, but it's only there because you've paid your taxes for many years beforehand. And it's a bit the same with this, isn't it? You've got to put the work in up front to get the free clicks further down the line.
It's either cost you thousands before you get the results, or it's cost you years in time to get the site working.
But are there any tools that you can use to automate some of this process, like the outreach that you talked about, or finding, who are good sites to approach?
Yeah, there are. So, I mean, the industry software for evaluating sites is typically Ahrefs, another one called Majestic, and another one called SEMrush. So all three of them do a similar type of thing. They evaluate these publishing sites, and then they will look at the quality of their existing link profile. They look at the sort of traffic they get, the sort of keywords they rank for, IP addresses, where the site's located. You can do quite a lot of due diligence with any one of these bits of software. I mean, we have licenses with literally everything. We've got 25 licenses, but you can choose just one and get a good feel for it. In terms of the outreach bit, rather than having to send individual emails, you could use a program like Mailshake is one that we use. Mailshake.
I've heard of that. Yeah,
that's pretty good. I use that for sales outreach. We do it for normal publishing relationships, building relationships.
Basically, we'll send an email to someone and then we'll automatically send them a nudge and reply after a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Schedule follow-ups. You can also do clever kind of merging where you tag first name, company name, last name, another special detail, and you can merge that with a spreadsheet that you build. So that there are clever ways to make emails look natural. But what we find works best is a combination of both. So a mixture of a bit of Mailshake to kind of get that initial engagement, and then once somebody responds, we normally take it off Mailshake, and we do proper conversations like a real human. Pick up the phone, interact with them on social. You've got to work every angle. But yeah, there is software that works.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm just looking at the comments as well. So don't forget, if you have questions that come up as from what we're talking about here, do put them in the comments, and I will interject with those as well. One thing I'm often asked, and I remember being asked this back in the day when I had my own agency, and SEO is one of the things we advise people on. The big question people always ask, how long does it take to see results? And has it? There never used to be a concrete answer to that. Has that changed in recent years?
No, the meme at the moment in the SEO land is it depends, and that is pretty. Although it's annoying for the person who ultimately signs off the budget, it's a difficult one to predict because first of all, as I said, there are lots of external factors. So Google being the biggest one, it can come out with an algorithm update and it can just shake the earth. And upset rankings very, very quickly. The Penguin one I talked about, that was the biggest one, and since then, at least annually there have been significant upgrades. So that is one aspect. Secondly is that competitors are always building links, they're doing changes to their sites, that ultimately has an impact. And then obviously making sure you make the right choices with budgets is another. So in terms of timescales, it's a hard one to predict, and everybody starts in different positions. There'll be brokers out there who are well established, they've been around for years, they've got a lot of legacy. It might take less work for them to see results. So I mean, loosely speaking, for a decent spend on a link building campaign, we would expect to see positive impact kind of 3 to 6 months in. But if anybody tries to give you a concrete answer, I would run a mile, because it just smells of BS.
Yeah. And I guess by the same token, anyone who says they guarantee to get you certain SEO results, that should set alarm bells ringing.
How can you guarantee something if you can't see the algorithm? No one can see it. No one actually knows 100% what the formula is, what the ratios. You just got to use experience and kind of playing around with different clients' campaigns to see what works, testing. So it's a difficult one. The smart thing to do, especially in this industry, is to target longer tail keywords or very, very niche specific keywords. So rather than just compare mortgage, it would be subcontractor mortgage, or it might be CCJ mortgage, the terms that have less search volume, but ultimately you get a better conversion. I'm sure it's the same with PPC.
I was going to say this, the SEO guy and the PPC guy are on exactly the same page here, because that's what I'm always telling clients and mortgage brokers and IFAs in particular, because it's so competitive. And anyone who's in my membership program will know that one of the very first modules in the training in there is choosing a niche, because if you can try and if you're aiming to be found on Google Ads, and it'll be the same for SEO, for something specific like mortgages for NHS staff, that's a far better bet than just trying to be found for mortgage advice.
Buy mortgage,
you've got less competition with the niche keywords, and the people who search for those generally have a better idea about what they're looking for, so they're more likely to be buyers rather than tire kickers.
Yeah, so somebody searching for CCJ mortgages, for example, knows that they have an issue. They know that it needs to be carefully handled, and ultimately,
they can't just walk into the high street bank.
No. And if somebody out there can take that lead and place their business with a provider, they're going to go through that mortgage because they've got less options. So it's about same with PPC. It's a balance between the bid price, or with SEO, how competitive that keyword is, and then versus the cost of acquiring that type of visibility. So, would it be better to spend £50 on a click for compare mortgages, or would you spend £3 on one of the keywords we talked about, and then spend your time educating that person, getting them familiar with your brand, to then convert them at a lower cost? And it's the same with link building. I would suggest targeting, unless it's a website that's very close to performing on those big keywords. For everybody else, just niche down, find something specific to focus on, and then get them into your site, and then keep them on the hook, and send them information, post regular content, and you will convert them. Yeah,
definitely. We've had one question which actually I was going to ask you myself in a moment, which is from Mikey. It says, I'm interested to understand what the costs might be and how we would quantify the success of employing this as an option. I'm guessing you mean the cost of basically getting you or an agency like you to do this. What sort of costs are involved?
Yeah, so a lot of agencies have minimum campaign spends. We don't. So there's no minimum order value. Per unit. So if you imagine a unit is an article that we write that is based on the keyword that you want to target and the page we're linking back to. So a link in an article on a site, that's a unit. The cost of that depends on economies of scale, like everything, the length of the editorial and the quality of that site. And the reason we do it that way is it's a fair way based on the amount of resource taken to build that relationship. So we talked about that site that took 3 months. That'll be an expensive link because it saves you 3 months worth of headache, but we have to get remunerated for that 3 months worth of pain. So it's proportionate. So to answer your question, you're looking at kind of 150 to probably 350 pounds per unit, depending on the quality. People tend to go for a handful of those per month normally, but you don't have to sign up to a monthly thing with us. You could do as many or as little as you like. If you land a big contract, spend a bit of money on your site. Dip in and out when you need to. But doing a little bit each month is sensible, because what you're saying to Google is you're constantly sending these signals that people are talking about you, that you are building up a popularity. And if you suddenly do a massive, great big peak of activity and then drop off a cliff, it kind of suggests that there was a lot of press, a lot of noise about you, and then there was nothing to sustain it. So
or it starts to look unnatural again, doesn't it? Like it wasn't people naturally talking about you. It maybe was happening because you did a shitload of SEO that month, but then
So you want to have a nice upward curve trajectory of, it's called link velocity, which is the speed that you acquire these links. So, campaign spend wise, people typically spend anywhere between 500 and 3k a month, and we've got clients that spend. I've got an insurance direct insurer who spends about 25k a month, but that's because they're going after these big terms that we talked about, hundreds of thousands of.
And they're up against Compare the Market and all those kind of big boys. So if I've understood that correctly, then that's quite different from a lot of SEO agencies that I've come across, because with most of them, they'll charge you a monthly retainer of X, where X seems to be anything from a couple of £100 to several thousand. But there's not a guaranteed kind of number of links. Whereas with what you're saying there, you're paying for an actual successful link placement.
It's completely predictable. So where you'd have a retainer, and part of that retainer might be 2 links per month, 10 hours on the site. You don't actually have much in the way of quantifiable information about what those links are going to be and the impact they're going to make. Whilst with what we do, it's all based on deliverables. So if you spend 2k on 10 links, for argument's sake, you are going to get those 10 links. And if for some reason the site decides they don't want to link back to you, we find a replacement. You're able to see the sites first. You get to read the content. So it's controllable. There's lots of visibility, and you know exactly what your spend's going to be.
I mean, that's really, unless you're doing dodgy stuff, that's as close as you can get to a guarantee in the SEO world, really, isn't it? It's a guarantee of actual links. Obviously you can't guarantee the results of that link because of all the things we talked about. But that to me feels far more far less risky than the things where you just chuck money at an SEO company every month and hopefully they get you some links.
Throw money into a pot, cross your fingers and hope that something happens. We don't contract people. People stick around because they're happy, not because a bit of paper tells them they're there for 11 months more. We'd rather people stuck around because they saw an impact.
And because one thing, in case I forget to mention later on, one of the things that that George has kindly offered to do is for anyone who is a member of the Predictable Pipeline program, you're offering 10% discount on your services, aren't you?
10% on a campaign and an audit as well, link audit. So that can sort of be part of. I could do some keyword research. I can benchmark your site. I can make some suggestions about certain pages that look good. Ways to structure a campaign.
Okay, fantastic. We'll talk more about that towards the end. But so I guess kind of linked to that, one of the things I've sometimes come across is people say to me, I've been talking to an SEO company and they're saying that they'll do my SEO for £300 a month. I generally, and that's not getting X number of links. That's just will do your SEO. I generally say in response to that, you're frankly better off not bothering at that kind of level, because
for that kind of money.
Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. Well, for that kind of money, for 300 quid, you're going to be getting an automated reports. There's software out there you could probably pay £50 for a license for, and you put your website in, and what it basically does, it'll produce a 20-page PDF that shows you your keyword visibility, the traffic you've had, page speed, the standard sort of stuff, and they'll just be printing that off and emailing you, sending it to you, and charging you for the privilege. And you might get, a fortnightly check-in, but you've got to break that fee down for £300. How many hours is that person going to be spending on your SEO? One at most. How much impact will 1 hour make? How much impact will it make after the 6th month? You could probably find that they make some changes in the first couple, and then not much really moves. And they certainly aren't putting the time into finding links or writing good quality content, because they can't justify it. And on top of that, that owner has to pay corporation tax, personal tax. It's got to take away all the deductibles, office costs. There's nothing in it. You would be, if you had 300 quid to spend, you'd be better off putting on PPC or Facebook marketing. Probably that's what I would do with it, or putting it into content. Spend the money on writing 5 or 6 good quality articles. Build up a bit of a quality site there, content wise.
Yeah. I'll put it on the favourite at Cheltenham. Okay. Now, one thing I know people talk a lot about in SEO, particularly in recent years, is the importance of website speed, and I wanted to get your sort of take on that. So people say that the speed of the website is now really important for SEO. Is that true, or is that just hype from people trying to sell you web speeding up software?
Yeah, I mean, so my knowledge for on-site is not as good as it is off-site. For my opinion on this is that it's a bit of a buzzword. I think SEO speed is something that everybody runs to, like you said, to push software. I think you need to make sure that the user experience wise, it's good for the person looking at your site. So if a site takes 10 seconds to load, I personally would go back to Google and I would go click on the next result. Those are signals that you're sending to Google. Your bounce rate, that's not very good. If lots of people are clicking on your site and then disappearing, that's only going to hurt your rankings, because Google doesn't know that that person has left because it's a slow load, or because what they've clicked on is completely irrelevant for what they're looking for, which means that the association between that click and that response, it's telling Google that they should not be in that position. So for that reason, you would want to have a site that loads properly, but saving quarters of seconds here and now, I think is obsessive. Overall, it's user experience, I think, that's the most important thing. Making sure they engaged on the site, making sure that the dwell time's good. So how long they're sat on that site, scrolling through, clicking through, how deep they go into your site, whether they go into different sections, about us, contact forms. That's what you need to be focusing on, is harnessing that traffic.
And that's kind of a general rule of thumb, isn't it, really? But if you do things to keep your users happy, you'll also, as a secondary effect, be keeping Google happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Final question from me, and then I'll just see if there's any others in the that come in on the chat when I'm asking you this. But if you had to give the people watching today three top SEO tips, what would they be?
Okay, so three tips for me. Okay, so keyword research is a massive one. You don't need to have access to all the softwares in the world, but you can look at what your competition are doing and look at the phrasing that they're using, whether they're trying to optimize for really big terms like compare mortgage, or whether they're looking for something that's long tail, lower search volume. Choose your keywords carefully, and then make sure that your things like your headers, your meta descriptions, the on-site elements are optimized properly. Don't overcook it. But make sure that things like your ratios are good. Things like Yoast SEO as plugins are good. They indicate to you kind of how many times you're repeating your keyword. Those tools are free.
Rank Math is another good one as well.
So that's really important. That's something that doesn't cost you anything, and is important. And then and
that's more of a one-off job, as I understand as well, isn't it? You could actually, if you sat down for a few hours or a weekend, depending on the size of your site, you could go through your whole site and do all that. That optimization in one hit.
And also it's not permanent, is it? So at the end of the day, you can try something and you can optimize your site for it. And actually, if it's not working, then you can go back in and you can tweak it, and you can play around, do some split testing yourself. Change one thing, see the impact it makes, and that kind of that research element with the keywords leads on to the second thing, which is the importance of content. Now, everybody, chats about content being king, and it is really cheesy, but ultimately you need enough meat there for Google to crawl. Now, if your homepage isn't ranking for a specific keyword and you want to rank for, like you said, mortgages for NHS staff, you can write an article, write a 1,000-word article, or pay an agency to write an article that focuses on that keyword, get it indexed, get it on your site, and you've got a good chance of ranking for that keyword. So that is the keyword research, then leading on to the second point, which is content being important, making sure you're posting regular content, it's good quality, you're linking out to reputable sources, that freshness indicates to Google that it's a busy, real site. That's a really good signal to send. And the third one is down to things like Google My Business, directory listings we talked about at the beginning, which with the citations, is the accuracy of your data. So a prime example would be your address, your telephone number, your web address when you're putting www. Or if you're putting http / make sure
Google My Business, just in case people aren't aware, that's what drives the local map results, isn't it, come up when you search for something.
That's really important. So making sure whatever you have on the Google My Business listing is exactly the same to the letter, and spacing in your postcode, things like that you've got on your directory listings, on your website, everywhere. It has to match up. Otherwise, if there's some inconsistencies, that can cause problems with Google. And we've done testing before where clients have had, like you said, they've had www instead of just the URL, or they've had a spacing in the postcode and it's completely thrown it off, or they've got an extra line in the address and then they've removed it somewhere else, and that's caused big problems. So that's really important, and all of those things are really low cost. So those would be my tips for people getting started.
Fantastic. Well, I hope you've got a good mixture there of some things people can do themselves if they've got the time and the inclination, but also, if they want some help with it, then obviously, you guys clearly know what you're talking about. There's a lot more guarantees around deliverables with what you're doing than there is with a lot of SEO companies. So the help is there if people want it. So just coming back to that, then I mentioned earlier on the fact if people want to use your services, and we've got one question coming from Nick. Is it right that posting weekly on your own Google business page and answering your own question helps with ranking?
Yeah, I mean, do you mean on the actual Google My Business listing?
Yeah.
I would say that's a good thing to do. I mean, in another business I'm involved in, we post competitions, regular pictures, questions and answers. Any type of engagement is good, but I mean, it'd be better if you could get a family relative or a previous customer or somebody to engage on that. Reviews are really good on Google. It's massive, because again, it's giving them confidence that you're authoritative and you're reputable. And
I guess as well with reviews, you don't want, because I've seen this before where I was in a networking group where sometimes someone would say, "Oh, could everyone here do me a favor and go and leave me a Google review if you've done business with me?" And I said to him, I don't think that's a good idea, because even though they're genuine reviews, if you suddenly get 10 in 1 week and then nothing for 6 months, that starts to look a bit suspect to Google.
Yeah, I mean,
it should be something you just ask them to do regularly, I guess, rather than
I mean, the natural thing would be to ask people on completion, whether you're doing mortgages or insurance, whatever it might be, you're going to have a steady stream of business coming through. So asking people to leave a review, recommendation, you could incentivize it. You could say, leave a recommendation and introduce somebody else, like those introducer schemes. Put that in with your Google reviews. You could run a competition.
So leave us a review, and once a month, everyone's left a review that month.
A
hat, and you get a whatever.
So again, officially, according to Google, we're not meant to do any of this stuff, but everybody does. And actually, as long as you do things in a careful way and it's considered and it fits in with kind of the amount of business you've got going on, the traffic that's coming to the site, just don't take the mick. Make sure don't overcook it.
Makes sense. So yes, what I was saying before was that the if anyone who is a member of the Predictable Pipeline program wants to use your services, that's where they can get 10% off. And I would post details of that in the Predictable Pipeline community after this. But for those who aren't members, people who are in the Facebook group and are watching this today, I believe we've got a free offer for them of you'll have a strategy call and an audit.
Yeah, so I'm happy to make some recommendations. So everybody's in different positions, whether you are just starting out or whether you're 10 years in. Everyone's website is different. So I would basically spend a couple of hours, have a look through the site, take a look at your backlink profile, have a look at competition, see what sort of keywords you're ranking for, and make some sensible suggestions about what to go after and basically how to justify the spend. So rather than just throwing a load of money at something and hoping that it works, actually saying, look, here's a group of keywords that are tied into a page. This looks good. These are why you should go for them. Building out a bit of a proposal for you. So that's a free of charge thing.
And if someone wants to what's the best way for someone to contact you if they want to do that?
Facebook's fine, or you can email me, which is george@uklinkology.co.uk, and we'll put it in somewhere on the Facebook.
Yeah,
group.
And if I just mention this Facebook group, then
mention that you're in the group, and we can make sure we sort out with the audit. And then obviously there's a special offer code for members as well. So what might end up happening is we do an audit, we give you some advice, and actually you want to move forward with the campaign. The cheapest way for you would be to become a member of David's and actually get that discount, and the advice from us as well. Yeah,
fantastic. Oh, we've got Rob Quinn has just a quick question. I mean, I haven't got the rest of the question, so if you get it in really quickly, Rob, we'll just hold on and wait for you.
Fast, Rob.
Here it is. Right. I hope it's a good question after that. We've built it up, haven't we? Does it make a big difference writing on website pages or uploading PDF documents on my blog section? All right.
So if we had this conversation a couple of years ago, it would all be about content going on your site, but I believe Google crawls PDFs now. So
they certainly come up in search results, don't they? So
yeah, so Google crawls PDFs, but I'm a bit of a stickler for kind of old school methods. Downloadables are good. Email marketing's good for PDFs, things like that, and obviously sales funnels. But I would always put plenty of quality content on your website. It's the same thing where you stumble across a website is just pictures, or it's blog posts that you can see on someone's site, but actually to Google you can't read a picture and it just sees code for the for connecting the blog section to the homepage. So
yeah, and also even if Google can crawl the PDF, the one thing you can't get Google Analytics on the PDF. So as the website owner, you can't see how long people have spent reading that PDF or things like that. Whereas if it was an actual web page, you'd have all that analytics data for it.
Also, not everyone's going to click and download it. Not everybody's going to want to download a file, but they don't mind scrolling for 2.5 seconds more.
Yeah.
One really, really good tip, content-wise on a site, is FAQs. They're brilliant. So from a user experience, it doesn't offend the eye. You could put 1,000 words in an FAQ, and it's a box about this big with 7 different subsections. And actually, Google, when it crawls that page, it sees all the content laid out in a long line, and it will give you some decent value for that. But it won't put a user off, so it won't mess up.
So it's kind of collapsible sections.
Yeah, they're really good, and you can transfer them between pages. You can make a site look really good with a decent FAQ.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right, brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for coming along today, George. I think I've learned a load of stuff. So hopefully everyone watching has done as well. We'll put something in the comments after this, just with George's contact details if anyone wants to take up on that offer.
Any questions? Happy to offer support. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. And so if you're watching this on the replay and you've got a question that we didn't answer, pop it in the comments, and we'll keep an eye on that over the next couple of days. So thank you very much, George. Thank you everyone for watching, and we're back again in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks for having me. Cheers,
Thanks,
David.
everyone. Cheers. Bye.